We made this.
Welcome to the October edition of Back to the Decade, the podcast where we go back 10 years and reflect on pop culture of the time. I'm Thomas Adams, joined as always by Nick Hoffman.
What's up?
Nick, we have reached October. We are 5 months into this podcast. A lot has changed for us, but nothing's changed for the world. We're still in lockdown, still recording over Zoom. It feels like so long ago that we did our first recording where we were actually like in person, doing it face to face.
That was like the first week or two of the pandemic too, right? Can't even.
It was like, I think it was the weekend before everything sort of shut down.
Yeah, you were like one of the last people that were allowed in our house.
Yeah, I probably was.
I mean, we've let people in our house since to like go to the bathroom and shit, but yeah, you were definitely like the last one to
actually
for like
just,
a
be
second
in there
and like talk and yeah.
Yeah, because I think like things shut down on a Tuesday and we did that on the Sunday beforehand or something like that.
Yep.
But yeah, we're in an exciting time for the show because we're coming to the end of our first year of coverage. We're gonna finish up 2010 and we are entering. I always qualify this as Oscar season, just as someone that follows movies, where we hit the fall and it's October, November, December is when you start seeing a lot of the movies that contend for Academy Awards. And we're going to talk about two of them today. We're doing The Social Network, and it's a bit of a cheat because it didn't come out wide in October, but we're talking about Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan, which came out wide in December but had a limited release back in October.
Yeah, and it's a horror film, and it was circulating in the in the festival scene in like September, so we're not doing anything too bad.
No, and it's really just to give us an opportunity. Like, there wasn't a ton for this month, but December's freaking loaded, so if we spread it out a little bit, it gives us more room later in the year to talk about some of those great movies that come out in December.
Yeah, no one wants to talk about psycho ballerinas and Christmas time. No one wants to do that.
No, we'll just talk about. I think we have True Grit on the schedule. That's a Christmas movie, right?
Ooh, yeah, that's good. I forgot about that one actually. That was at a time when I was really into those like Western remakes. So I was so excited about that Coen Brothers remake of True Grit.
I've never seen it. I'm excited to watch it. That and Tron Legacy are the last two movies on our schedule that I've not seen before.
Mm.
But these are two movies that we both love. I'm pretty sure that both Black Swan and Social Network were collectively on both of our top fives in the beginning of this when we talked about like our five favorites from 2010. I think we both had these two movies. So that'll be exciting to talk about. Before we hit our decade rewind, though, do we have anything to catch up on? Anything that we've been watching recently since we last recorded?
Oh man, well I will say something I was really excited for like the last year, and the final episode was on last Friday, and I watched it like late night because I was just pumped for it. Otherwise, I'd been kind of spreading it out fairly well. But the show on Amazon called The Boys.
The Boys season 2, right?
Yeah, man. Loved season 1. So I was pumped for season 2. Did not disappoint. The ending of the season was a little slightly hokey, like but what I liked is it gave a lot of closure, so that was good. Didn't kind of leave me hanging like the first season did, which I sort of hate when things do that because then I'm
the
just
finger
like,
thing.
Yeah, but it was awesome. I love the actors in that show. I love the idea of that show about Justice League type of superheroes that work for the government or like a big corporation and are really just a bunch of assholes, like evil assholes that put on a show for the American people and pretend like they're doing good, but the reality is they're awful people, and they're doing terrible things. Not too unlike what's happening in our own country today. So yeah, it's fucking great, man. I love it so much.
I mean, we did have the president that wanted to, in the throes of being COVID positive, wanted to come out appearing frail and rip off his shirt to reveal a Superman t-shirt underneath. That sounds kind of like something from The Boys.
Yeah, man. Don't even get me started.
That's a show that I've not seen yet. I'm just having the hardest time getting into TV shows. Like, I've watched some movies in these past couple of weeks, but my experience since the baby came along is it'll take me probably 9 to 10 hours to watch a 2-hour movie because I end up pausing it so freaking often.
Oh man, yeah.
Diaper or like calm her down or whatever it might be.
I was talking to Kat tonight about now when we're not hanging out with the baby and taking care of her and finally get her down, I find it hard to think of something or just to do something other than just like sit there and do nothing. I'm just like, I don't want to do anything. I don't know. And then I contemplate what I should watch. That's why I've just been watching a lot of sports lately, because I don't have to
be locked in all the time paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Boys was something I was super excited about, something I could watch late at night and just watch for myself. But those hours between taking care of the baby and stuff, I don't.
Yeah, that's something that I've fallen into as well, where I just I put her down for naps and then I come out to the living room and I just kind of sit there and I'm like, I don't know what to do, because I know that the moment I start anything, she's going to start crying and I'll interrupt it. So I end up on my phone or playing video games or who knows what. The one thing that we're only 2.5 episodes in, but The Haunting of Bly Manor came out the end of this week. And, talking about the Halloween spirit, it's the follow-up to The Haunting of Hill House, which came out on Netflix in, I believe, 2018.
Yeah, I had a lot of people tell me that I should watch that. Never did.
I loved it. The first season was, it's hard to describe, but it was so many twists and turns that had me on the edge of my seat, and the horror was just wonderfully executed. It was a genuinely scary show, I felt like, which is surprising because I'm not someone that scares that easily. But a lot of those supernatural elements, it's just a really well done ghost story. And there was a memorable moment from the Hill House season where this jump scare occurs, and Caitlin and I were so unexpecting of it that we literally both audibly screamed. We were like, ah! And then we turned to each other and saw each other both screaming, and it made us scream more. It was really fun because we just had this moment of we looked at each other and just started laughing because of how much it effectively got us to get up and freak the hell out. So Haunting of Hill House, the first season was great. Haunting of Bly Manor just came out. It's nothing to do with the first season. It's an anthology series, kind of like American Horror Story.
Yeah, I like that.
So this new season, only 1/5 of the way into it, but it's good again, and I'm excited to see where it goes. It definitely seems like more of a slow burn than the first season was, but it'll be a good thing to watch as October carries on.
Nice. Yeah, there's definitely, speaking of horror, there's some stuff I do want to watch, which was popular around when the pandemic started, but that movie, The Invisible Man, that looked really good and got a lot of great, reviews. And that's something that Kat and I are going to try to watch some point this month. So
Yeah, it's on
excited.
HBO. It's on HBO now, I think.
Yeah, exactly. We're excited to see that. So
The last movie, well, I did go and see Tenet, but the last movie I saw in theaters before the pandemic was The Invisible Man.
oh wow.
And that is a good movie. So it'll be a good thing to watch in October.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way it's better than the Kevin Bacon version, Hollow Man, but I'm ready to
Yeah.
give it a shot.
I mean, few
I was,
things are better without Kevin Bacon. So
yeah, that movie when I was younger, man, my buddies and I went to the theater and saw Hollow Man, and we thought it was such a ridiculous movie. Not good, but something about it was very likable. So it was one of those movies that was like just in our rotation for years later. I don't know. Just we would always like talk about like the weird Kevin Bacon like Invisible Man
Invisible
sex
Man.
scene. It's
Yeah.
just so many strange like uncomfortable things that happen in that movie that just always make us laugh.
I'll say one thing, like we could kind of use this to get into a broader conversation about horror movies in general since it is October.
Yeah.
For the first time ever, the past couple of days, I watched the Alien trilogy.
Oh my god.
I
First
had
first time?
I had never seen any of the Alien movies.
What the fuck, man? Yeah,
I
dude.
I couldn't tell you why, but it was just something that always escaped me. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna watch the Alien movies, and
Oh, so good.
they're really good. They're really good. The first, I can only imagine, and this is something as like a movie buff, I've long heard people talk about the trailer for the first Alien and how it's
Yeah.
one of the most memorable trailers of all time because it was just dark space and like the letters would slowly develop in like these little dashes, and then
Yeah,
at
they had
the
the sound of ding,
yeah, yeah.
however it goes. So
Yeah,
good.
that sound, the siren just going, and then slowly you see the word alien form, and then it like
Yeah.
cuts to black and says, "In space, no one can hear you scream."
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, what an effective freaking tagline. Um, so I knew a lot of the memorable scenes from Alien just because it circulates on every AFI special, but I can only imagine going into that movie with no idea what was going to happen and watching that freaking thing burst from the stomach, and it's really just a great horror showcase.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I was really stoked early on in the pandemic. Whenever HBO Max came out, I was really excited about it. They had this great movie catalog that had aliens on it. And I was so pumped, man, because I hadn't watched Aliens. That's the sequel to Alien in years and years, and it was always one of my favorite movies growing up. And like I collected all kinds of like Alien toys, and I'm pretty sure I saw Aliens the sequel in the theater. I think if I didn't, I don't know. I loved it from the moment I saw it. So
You would have
I
been 5 years old.
yeah,
So
maybe that one. I saw Total Recall in the theater because that was the first movie I remember ever seeing in the theater.
mhm.
But I'm pretty sure that was after Aliens, right? So, but yeah, man, I love that movie so much. I mean, they're all great.
Yeah,
They all have their own. Well, I'm not gonna talk about Alien versus Predator, but because those movies are
no,
dog shit. But the
I do.
first four, dude, like even the third one has some good things, and the fourth, like Alien Resurrection, like a lot of people shit on that one, but I love that shit too. So
So that's the only one I've now not seen because I watched Alien, Aliens, and Alien 3.
yeah,
And I'd weirdly, like I just said, I had never seen those three movies, but I had seen Prometheus and Alien Covenant,
huh.
so just completely out of order. But
Well, I guess you saw it in order, technically.
yeah, because those two are prequels.
I did not like Covenant, but I love Prometheus.
Yeah, Prometheus is good.
Prometheus is awesome.
Covenant
Covenant.
Covenant is weird, but I do think Michael Fassbender is a good performance in that movie.
Yeah, I'd have to rewatch it because honestly, I was pretty drunk with my buddy when we went and saw that in the theater,
Yeah,
and
it's like a memorable movie.
I was disappointed. But I
But
haven't I haven't watched it since. But yeah, no man, the first two classics. The third one's flawed but good. Fourth one
the
sucks,
third the
but
third
it's
one's
great.
Fincher, so it's like it's going to be, it's really impressive how you have Ridley Scott, James Cameron, and David Fincher, like these three Hall of Fame directors that all got to like step in and do their own sort of work in the franchise. But I think it was really intelligent of them with Aliens to be like, you know what, the first one was more of a horror movie. We're just going to do a straight up Jurassic Park style monster movie where it's just action and the whole movie is just about beating the shit out of these things as much as we can. Whereas the first one was more of like the bottled, we're in a tight space with this one creature trying to run away, and when is it going to pop up? Who knows? Very different movies, but both just like really great in their own rights. And I love the trope of like she wakes up, it's like, I've been in hypersleep. How long have I been out? It's like, you've been out for 57 years. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
So I had a good time with that. So that's about all I've watched so far in terms of horror movies to get in the October spirit. What are some of your go-to Halloween movies?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Evil Dead trilogy. So, as you know, so many are.
Yeah.
I love Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness. Half my life I've been using the term boomstick to be my many like usernames for things, which is from Army of Darkness, and his boomstick is his shotgun. And yeah, if you don't, have you ever seen any of those movies?
I've not.
That's definitely kind of like way past your time. Well, then, yeah, I assign you to watch those because they're fantastic. Especially, I mean, the original Evil Dead's great. But this might be somewhat blasphemous for a lot of Evil Dead trilogy fans, but I would just to go ahead and just watch Evil Dead 2. You don't necessarily have to watch the first one. It's fine. It's the original. It's a classic as well.
Evil Dead 2 is Dead by Dawn.
Yeah, that basically kind of it wraps up the first one in like the first 10, 15 minutes. It even like changes some of the story from the first one. It's really funny. I don't know. That's kind of when the moment of comedy and horror start to sort of intertwine with each other in Evil Dead 2, which to me, in my personal opinion, Evil Dead 2 is the greatest mix of horror and comedy. Because you have some truly bizarre and like terrifying moments, but other times...
is it the Evil Dead is a straight up horror movie and then Evil Dead 2 is like a parody of itself?
I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a parody of itself, but there's moments, like I was about to say, I mean, there's moments where it's terrifying, and then there's moments where it's really funny, but there's also moments where it's both terrifying and funny. I don't know, man. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's definitely a special movie for me. And then Army of Darkness, which is funny. The third one is just like a complete, like straight up, for the most part, comedy. It's like slapstick, like Three Stooges, ridiculous comedy, but still horror as well. And it takes place like immediately after the second one. There's time travel involved. It's just fucking great, man. And yeah, of course, Ash, who's the iconic character, fights these deadites, which are just like human bodies that have been... a book has passages from a book have been read in the woods, and this evil force, these evil spirits have been awoken, and they just travel through the air, which is another thing that was really iconic from the 80s, right? That Sam Raimi and the Coen brothers use this a lot, where they like get the camera on like a piece of plywood and two people carrying on either end, and they're just chasing the person on camera, and that became a really iconic shot that people used in movies for years and decades later. But yeah, it's basically... Sorry, go ahead.
Did you ever watch Ash versus Evil Dead?
Oh my god, yeah, dude. I was so excited when that came out. It finally happened, because they've been talking about doing a sequel to Army of Darkness for over 2 decades, you know. So it finally came to fruition, and they actually filmed it, and I was totally cool with them making it a show as opposed to just like a straight movie sequel. And man, it was good. It was really good, and it lasted 3 seasons. So we basically got...
That's what I heard.
can't remember how many hours of content it was, but I don't know. It's something crazy, basically like a 16-hour sequel to Army of Darkness. I don't know what more you could ask for an Evil Dead fan. And I even went to I think the last season that was on. I actually got access to go to the Atlanta Film Festival, and the whole cast and crew was there, and I was like set front row and watched Bruce Campbell and the rest of the cast talk about, and they showed us the first like couple episodes, which is really cool.
That's awesome. I mean, I might have to go back and check all of it out. I mean, there's tons of stuff that I need to watch, but I definitely it seems like something that would be up my alley.
It's so good, man. It's just the fact that you've never experienced it. Somewhat jealous, I would love to go through that all again, fresh. But
I mean, it is just sort of it is kind of an age thing where it just didn't fall into my generation's popular culture, so it's like something that I would have to seek out. I've never really been a big I like horror movies, but I don't have my go-to favorites. I think I'm much more into psychological horror, like we're going to talk about today in Black Swan, or something like Misery, or It Follows comes to mind. It Follows is a recent movie that I love. That was much more about the idea of horror than some monster that was there to scare you.
No, I totally agree. Actually, I'm in the same boat there because, I don't like horror movies that deal with satanic bullshit, like being possessed by the devil kind of stuff, or like and then it's like the Rob Zombie bullshit. Can't do it. It's just like that gratuitous, just torture horror. Can't do.
No,
So
I
like those
hate
type of movies. I just
torture
can't do
horror,
that.
yeah.
I can't do that stuff, man.
Like supernatural stuff works on me for some reason, like The Conjuring, even the first Paranormal Activity, like that stuff is effective for me because I think I'm much more interested as like a consumer in the types of horror that you can't see. So when you have a ghost movie and you're creating horror by these like little movements of things in the house, like be it a cabinet opening or a door closing, like those little things are much more interesting to me than the serial killer in the mask with a knife that's there to slice you up.
Yeah.
Although I love Scream. That is a franchise I am very fond of.
Yeah, but that's like you mentioned parody earlier. I mean, that's just a parody of everything.
Yeah.
Like
It's the parody of Halloween or
Wes Craven, like what is the parody of his own movies. But I love those movies too because I grew up with them. I thought they were great. But yeah, psychological for sure, which is exactly what Black Swan is. That's why I love this movie so much. Is because it's the type of horror that not only when it's so well done as Aronofsky, he did an incredible job with this movie, but like truly terrifying moments where they really like send chills up my spine, man. Like with that when there's like a mother involved like that, this mother like
it's very Norman Bates, right? Like
it's just this,
that's kind of the origin of it, like the controlling old woman that's I guess Norman Bates is a good origin, but Carrie as well. I always think about Carrie, and I think that we'll get in depth in Black Swan here in a second, but I think a lot about Carrie as it relates to Black Swan because it's that element of the innocent young girl, like perfectly innocent, very coddled and whatnot, but then that mother that's there just sort of driving her to the brink of insanity until eventually she snaps. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it might blow your mind, but I've never seen Carrie.
It's pretty good. It's not like it's more so the classic element of it.
Yeah.
Where it wouldn't hold up today very well.
I mean, I know it. Like I know the scenes. Like I know
the pig's blood and They're all gonna laugh at you, is the famous line that she says, and Carrie ends up blowing everybody up at the prom. And
Right. I know. Yeah. That I just never felt the need to see it because I felt like I already had seen it in a way, so I just never watched it.
yeah, it's I have like I think my favorite. I love The Silence of the Lambs. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I wouldn't qualify that as, it's certainly a horrific experience, but it's much more of a psychological drama, like mystery, in my opinion, than it is a straight up horror. I think my favorite horror film is probably The Shining. Like, that movie, just the first time I saw it, left me with chills down my spine, and
Love that movie so
it's
much.
just
Yeah.
so wonderfully done.
I don't want to hurt you. I just want to bash your fucking brains in. That's one of my all-time favorite movie lines. I love it so
Yeah,
much.
I mean, Jack Nicholson is just on 1,000 in that movie, and it's really fun to watch.
Great rewatchables of that. If you ever listen to it,
It's one of those few like slow dramas that I feel like I could watch time and time again because it has so many memorable moments.
it's another movie on my list to watch. This would be a good month to watch it. The sequel that came out recently. What was it called?
Dr. Sleep.
Yeah, I want to see that.
It's good, and I'm pretty sure it's on HBO.
Yeah, it is.
So it's long. It's like 2.5 hours, but it's definitely, it's a lot more tied into The Shining than I thought it would be. Like, they go back to the Overlook, and you see so many of those iconic set pieces, and it's actually by the same director who did The Haunting of Hill House, and
Cool.
he's become like one of my. His name's Mike Flanagan, and he did a movie called Hush, Dr. Sleep, obviously Hill House. He's become one of my favorite directors of that genre because
Nice.
he's just really good at building tension. So yeah, that's a good one to check out. But I think on that note, we can go ahead and hit the decade rewind.
Let's go back to the decade.
All that discipline for what?
Want to be perfect.
Perfection is not just about control. It's also about letting go. Transcendence. And very few have it in them.
Since we were just talking about horror movies, I think we should do Black Swan first, even though it came out in December. We're going to lead with it. You watched Black Swan more recently. I saw this movie. I mean, I'd seen it before, but I watched it again in May. So you're a little more fresh on it. So why don't you start us off with your overall thoughts?
Yeah, I watched it last night, late night. It's always a great movie to watch when all the lights are out. And what was cool was the first time I saw this movie was later in its run, after it had already hit theaters and, you know, it won the awards and everything, and the Oscars. I was in New York visiting my brother, and my brother and his wife and kid, they had just had their first kid in the last year or whatever. And his wife Julie was there on something to do for work. So they lived there for 6 months, which is cool. And it was my first time ever going to visit New York. So I went to this. I stumbled upon this theater in New York that just had one. They just show one movie, and they show it for 3 months or whatever. And they were showing Black Swan. So I walked in by myself and bought a ticket and sat there in the theater by myself. There wasn't many people in there, and there weren't many people in there. And it really just immediately grabbed me and shook me, and was, I thought, such a well-made movie. I was already a huge fan of Darren Aronofsky, and yeah, I mean, obviously, I wasn't like I didn't know anything about this world that we were visiting of these, the world of the
Dancers.
dancers and doing these insane shows, these spectacles where they have to do
Right.
all kinds of crazy preparation and put themselves through absolute hell, like to be able to do their little dances and get on their toes and all their twisties and twervies. And it was fascinating to me. And you kind of immediately are thrown into this young woman's life, Nina, who
Mm-hmm.
is somewhat of a tortured soul. She lives with her mother. I don't know if do they ever mention how old she is? I think she's like in her early 20s, right?
Nina? Yeah,
Yeah.
she seems about in her 20s.
Yeah, so she's clearly groomed by her mother and controlled by her mother. You kind of catch on to that fairly early on, and her mom is just like super into keeping tabs on her and making sure she's doing all little routines, and you kind of dive right into her life, and she's going from the studio to practice to the concert hall and everything, and back to home, and she's staying long days and nights to getting ready for the next big spectacle, which is this play that features the Swan Queen, which she really, really wants the role of.
The whole Black Swan, White Swan thing.
Yeah, the production's called Swan Lake.
Yeah,
and it's it's a famous production by some man that I cannot pronounce his name. But anyway, she obviously really wants the role as the Swan Queen, and the director has this idea to not just have the good pure swan, which is the white swan, but also have her play the black swan, the flawed, troubled, sadistic
yeah, it's
swan.
Like the white swan is elegant and pure, and the black swan is aggressive, and
Yeah,
the dance moves are very thrashing, and
yeah, exactly.
Is very like, I don't know. It's the ballet equivalent of heavy metal.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. Yeah, I mean, so the whole movie really is just that transition of her becoming that black swan, and man, it's definitely a wild ride.
Yeah, it's very for lack of a better phrase, this is a mindfuck movie where you're very engaged in the character's psyche, and because she's so obsessed over this perfection. I'm trying to think of another. Can you think of another movie like this where it's about like obsession with a certain like profession towards. I feel like this is a almost a genre. I know movies.
Yeah, you
like
put me on the spot here. Let me think. Yeah, I mean, I know there definitely are movies that have that.
This Whiplash. Whiplash is like that,
Yeah,
where it's like the obsessiveness with being perfect.
or Ricky Bobby.
Yeah, I mean, if you ain't first, you're last. That is the movie that taught us that.
Man, I'm sure that I've seen like dozens of movies like this, but maybe not dozens, but yeah, there's definitely a lot in this type genre for sure.
Something like Nightcrawler comes to mind. Uncut Gems is a more recent example of just someone being so obsessed with something that they lose their mind. The movie we're going to talk about next, The Social Network, is in a lot of ways about like the danger of obsession. I think we both said that the Social Network is kind of a secret horror movie.
Yeah, definitely a horror movie, and I love I love pairing these two. Like, I'm glad, that's another reason I was glad that we brought Black Swan into this month, because I think you can compare these two in a lot of ways that are interesting. And yeah, Social Network is definitely a different beast of a horror film. That's actually, well, the reason it's such a horror film is because it's reality. But
what's happened in the
Yeah.
years since, and we'll talk about this later when we talk about Social Network, because I have something to say on that subject. But Black Swan in particular, so you have like the lead performance by Natalie Portman that she wins the Oscar for, and it's an unbelievable performance. It's so unsettling, and she's an actress that I've always really loved.
Yeah, and you're really getting her the whole time. I mean, she's like a one-woman show, man. Just like, obviously all these characters around her, and they're doing or not doing things that she sees them doing. That's still unclear, even watching it again recently, where she sees people laughing at her or saying something about her, or she thinks she hears them say something about her, but maybe they really weren't just saying anything. It was all in her head. But yeah, man, her performance is haunting and just really beautiful performance, heartbreaking, and all the things that it takes to win an Oscar. She did those things very well.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about this and Social Network, and kind of ties them together for me, is the Eisenberg performance in Social Network they're similar to each other in that they're both really going for it and really like pushing all of the details that make these characters flawed, maybe sympathetic, but also dangerous. And in my opinion, both of these movies have supporting performances that are some of my favorites of all time. I love Mila Kunis in this movie, and I think that what she's able to bring to Lily, who's like the rival for Nina, this woman that represents everything Nina wants to be but feels like she can't. It's such a great foil, and I don't know if the movie works without it. It's just this like wonderful push and pull of those two personalities.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely doesn't work without it, because Mila Kunis is the Black Swan. I mean,
right,
she's she's doing all the things on stage that that Nina wants to be doing, when she has the director yelling at her like, you're too perfect, you're always striving for perfection, all your moves are just like so calculated and perfect and stiff, right? Because they're just doing them all exactly how they're choreographed to be. And instead of the Black Swan, what he wanted was it to be loose and easygoing and not caring, and all those things that she wasn't.
Right, and then of course there's the twist at the end that so much of what we see from Mila Kunis in the movie is invented in Natalie Portman's head, to where
spoiler alert.
We've spoiled every movie we talk about.
No, I know. I was just making a little dad joke there.
It is the moment that I really enjoy this movie as an experience, but it's the moment where we learn that twist is when it kind of reaches a new level for me, because it recontextualizes so much of what we saw in the first couple of acts between that Nina and Lily relationship, to find out that Lily's not some psychopath like some of Nina's hallucinations would have you believe, and it's just all entirely in her head.
Yeah,
right down to that famous lesbian sex sequence.
Oh yeah, which we have to talk about, right? Because that was that was well talked about at the time. I found the way that Darren Aronofsky filmed it to be about as tasteful as you could make the scenes.
Yeah.
There's the one scene where Nina, what the director tells her to go home and touch herself, right? And to go home and masturbate. And so that's the first scene, which was widely talked about as well, where she, after having a fight with her mother being concerned about a scratch on her back, her mother puts her to bed, and then she wakes up the next morning and decides to, start masturbating, and she's getting into it, and then she looks over and her fucking mom's sitting there in the chair like asleep, man. That's one of those moments. I'd forgotten that happened. I was like, oh my God. Can't imagine. But you're also really pissed at the mother too, because you're like, God damn it, we could have seen more, and look what you did, Mom, you bastard. Anyway, that's how I felt 10 years ago anyway.
Right.
And then, yeah, with the lesbian sex scene, which she, completely fantasizes about, and she thinks is real at first, after rolling on whatever they took, Molly or...
It was like ecstasy, some...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Mila Kunis's character going down on her and then looking up, and it's actually, Nina's face.
Right.
Which, again, symbolizes the fact that she just wanted to be this wild woman who would do something crazy like this.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when I was younger, you're like, oh man, it's two girls kissing. And that's, it was such a sort of immature reaction that you have as a young man.
Sure.
But then when you watch it as a grown adult and you're seeing the literary reasons for that sort of a sequence, and it just really elevates the movie by symbolizing this forbidden desire of the character, and you, without the context, when you're just pulling it up on YouTube, you're like, okay, it's two very attractive actresses having sex with each other. But when the movie puts it into context and you can see what the scene represents for the greater story, it's, it just really blows me away. It's great storytelling.
Yeah, and like I was saying, as far as him doing it in as about as a tasteful way as you can as a director, filming a scene like that, I totally was so engrossed in the story and the characters. I mean, I'm not going to say I had forgotten about those scenes, because obviously I hadn't, and I was waiting for them. I was like, oh, we're going to get these iconic, lesbian sex scene again. Here we go. But once I got there, I'm like, oh, well, this is so well done. You're in it and then you're out of it, and it's on to, her confronting Mila Kunis about this, her just like, she left without saying goodbye, you just took off, and she's like, what? I wasn't there this morning. What, did you have some sort of les sex fantasy about me? How was I? And you realize it wasn't even real. It's just so seamless and perfectly done by Aronofsky there.
Right, and it all culminates in this exchange in the dressing room where Lily, the Mila Kunis character, is going to play the Black Swan and basically steals the role. And if I'm not mistaken, like I said, I watched it a couple months ago. The Portman character stabs her with a shard of glass,
mm-hmm.
and
as they're shoving her against the because she's in there about to take it over, right? Because she got dropped or whatever. Yeah.
So she stabs her, and you think that she just killed Mila Kunis, and then refresh me, how do they reveal that Mila Kunis is not actually there?
So she goes out, and now she's got this just new confidence about herself because she just murdered this person. And I think she's just like, fuck it. I'm going to go out there. I got no care in the world anymore. I just murdered someone. Who cares? Whatever. Let's do this thing. So she just has this amazing, what's the word I'm looking for?
Bravura.
Yeah, she just gets out there and just gets it done, man. And that's when her eyes go red, and she's all in her Black Swan, outfit. She's got the net over her face, and she goes towards the camera, which is my favorite shot of the movie, where she really pushes her face towards the camera, mm-hmm. and you see the red eyes, and she just does she has a perfect dance sequence where she's like the seductive swan, right? She becomes the Black Swan, and she finishes that sequence of the show, everyone is just like in awe, like, oh my God, Nina, wow, it's such an incredible job. So good. Thank you. Like that was incredible. And she goes back to her dressing room to prepare for the final scene, for the climax of the story and everything, where she falls and someone knocks on her door and she opens it and it's Mila Kunis.
It's Lily. That's right. That's
Lily,
right.
yeah. And she's like, wait, no, I just murdered you. And yeah, she saw the blood on the floor before that in the closet where she shoved the body, and she put a towel over it. And then after she talked to Lily, was that her name, Lily?
Yeah.
She goes back and the blood's gone and there's no body. So.
And it's her blood. She stabbed herself.
That's right. Yep.
And the reason her eyes were red is because she's like bleeding out. It is one of those sequences, because it culminates in she does the final Swan Queen performance and it's elegant, and she falls and she's sitting there dying and she says, I was perfect, and then it cuts to black.
It was perfect.
Yeah, it was perfect. And it's one of those endings where you just kind of sit there in the credits for a solid 10 minutes, just kind of letting it wash over you, because if it worked on you, like, I understand for some people I know a lot of people that thought this movie was too weird and it just didn't necessarily work for them, but if you let yourself get caught up in it, then it's impossible to not just be kind of knocked back into your seat by the ending.
Yeah, and it's just, the whole movie is terrifying. I mean, I don't know. The thought of, I don't know, that whole like motherly control over their soul, daughter or son or whatever, however it's made in any of these type films, where the mother is just this like crazy, sadistic control freak.
Yeah.
That really basically locks their daughter in a room and trying to watch their every move. Like, even when Lily comes over to try to apologize and take her out, which they eventually do go out. It's when that night she trips on Molly or whatever. Her mom just keeps like coming out like, your dinner will get cold. Like, they weren't even eating dinner. There was no dinner. And then her coming out again, like, you need to come in and get some rest. Like, oh, that's just like, that gives me the willies, man. And the thought of mothers or fathers that are actually like that, which I know there have been in history, of the world. That's why they make movies like this. And it freaks me out, man. Like, I find that truly terrifying that someone could be raised by a person like that, and then now they're basically locked away in this apartment that's basically a prison, right? And they're just completely controlled from head to toe. I mean, I was shocked that the mother even allowed her to walk on the New York streets by herself to go to these like practices,
the classes.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's a lot of elements to the movie that contribute to that feeling of claustrophobia, because I think that's what they want you to feel for the Nina character, that she's very sheltered and would have no idea of knowing how to behave in a normal situation because she's not had a normal life. But it definitely works for conveying how she could get to the sort of mental instability that would lead to the ending of the movie, which is her more or less committing suicide to achieve this perfect performance.
Yeah, in the room where like her mom's like painting all these paintings of herself, like of her daughter, right, of Nina.
Yeah.
It freaks me out. Like, what the fuck? Like, if I was the daughter, I'd be like, whoa, I'm out, man. I'm moving out. Oh, you know what we haven't talked about too, which I'm kind of surprised it's taken us this long, but Winona.
Yeah.
Winona Ryder. Like, plays a small role in this movie where Nina is basically her successor. And she once was the director's little princess, and now
she's too old now.
Yeah, now Nina is the little princess, but Winona Ryder, gives another great performance. And one scene I'm still not, so to give a quick dive into her character, like you just said, she was like the hot dancer that was doing all the shows, and she was like the lead dancer of all the performances and everything. And then she got older, and the director basically forced her into retirement, and then she became extremely depressed and drunk and angry, and she basically throws herself, which we never see, but we're told that she throws herself into traffic, gets hit by a car, and she's in the hospital, and Nina goes to visit her, and her legs are all fucked up, and they're all like, it's just grotesque and tragic. And the director says that she most likely did it on purpose because just the type of person she was. So, I mean, she was mentally just like, maybe I don't know if she was just as I don't think she was just as messed up as Nina, right? But she had become this this sort of victim in this world of I don't know if you want to blame the director or the.
Well, it's an abusive Nina has an abusive relationship to her mother, and the director represents this similar abuse where he's a controlling guy that demands certain things out of his pupils.
Yeah.
The mother is obviously extremely controlling, and Nina's dealt with that her entire life. And now the director very much has the same issue. And the Winona character is a victim of that. And it's just enough to where when she does throw herself in front of a car, it wants you to wonder if the director did it. You're kind of sitting there like, is something ominous going on here? Was she pushed? But it's in the end a good.
Damn, I didn't even think about that.
I remember getting that feel watching it, but it's ultimately a great foreshadow for what the Nina character is going to succumb to, because Winona, if the two characters are mirrored, Winona pushed herself so far to the brink that she basically mutilated herself, or however you want to phrase it. And then Nina does the same exact thing in the end. And their two paths sort of culminate in this one result.
So my big question is, the scene where Nina goes to visit her a second time in the hospital, and she brings her all the things back, right, that she had kind of taken from her dressing room.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things was like, I don't know, knife, nail filer thing, or whatever that was.
Yeah.
And then Winona's character starts stabbing herself in the fucking face. Did that actually happen? Or did Nina do that to her? Like, that's one part where I don't understand if it's real or not, or if Nina just imagined all that.
I think it's ambiguous. I think the movie wants you to question what was real the entire time. Like, what we end up with is an extremely unreliable narrator, because obviously Nina hallucinates a bunch of shit.
But she came home and she did have blood on her hands. Like, she was washing it off.
She did. And we talked about movies that are kind of like similar vibes. It reminds me of Birdman 2. That's another movie where the character is sort of losing himself in performance, and there's a lot of ambiguity in terms of what's real and what's not.
Yeah.
So I could see it going either way, but I think the most likely, in my opinion, the most likely answer is that Nina did it. Like, everything we're seeing other people do is Nina's alter ego, like her other personality, the quote unquote Black Swan, is doing that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's good that it's ambiguous. Ambiguity's fun.
Because then you also see Winona's character with the holes in her face and bleeding, like the ghost of herself in her apartment as well. Like, she was immediately feeling this guilt for doing what she did. I don't know. Because, man, I don't know. It was maybe the third time I'd watched the movie. I actually had it on DVD. I bought it years ago and probably had only watched it that one time once I bought the DVD and I put it back. So I found myself asking the same questions I was probably asking myself all those years ago. But It was
That's that's a sign of a good story when it makes you keep asking questions multiple times after seeing it.
Exactly.
All right, let's transition and talk about The Social Network.
I think I've come up with something.
That looks good. That looks really good.
People want to go on the internet and check out their friends, so why not build a website that offers that? I'm talking about taking the entire social experience of college and putting it online.
I'm living in that 21st century.
They've got 2,200 hits within 2 hours.
22,000. Wow. We don't know what it can be. We don't know what it will be. We know that it is cool. This is our thing.
You made the Facebook.
Yeah, groupies.
This is our time.
$1 million isn't cool. You know what's cool?
You?
$1 billion.
We don't need him.
You're going to get left behind. It's moving faster than any of us
get
imagined it
left
would
behind.
You're being accused of breaching security, violating individual privacy.
Your best friend is suing you for $600 million.
I didn't know that. Tell me more.
The Social Network it popped up on many lists of like the best movie of the entire decade, which is honestly something I have no problem with. I think it's right up there for me. It holds up every single time I revisit it. It's obviously directed by David Fincher. It's written by Aaron Sorkin. It's just these like two amazing talents at the peak of their game joining forces to put like one of the most relevant stories of our time to screen. And it's super effective. And obviously, as things have developed with Facebook, it's only gotten more and more relevant because Facebook has gotten more and more sinister. I don't know. Have you seen that Aaron Sorkin is writing a sequel?
Yeah, I did see this recently, and I was pretty pumped about it.
I think it could be really good because there's definitely stuff to explore with that.
Oh man, there's so much that's happened. And that movie was 2010, but it was everything that took place. I don't know,
the late 2000s, like 2003 to 08.
So there's so much that's happened in that time span, and question is, who do you get to play? Do you use Jesse Eisenberg again?
Use Eisenberg again, yeah.
That's what I think too. But my buddy, who is also really excited, thinks that they need to recast for an older Zuckerberg. Which, I mean, they're like the same age in real life, but he still feels that it should be recast. I don't know why.
I don't know why you would. I think that it's the fact that Eisenberg has aged basically with Zuckerberg. It's the perfect way to revisit it. And honestly, I don't know what role someone like, obviously, Sean Parker and Eduardo Savern would not be very involved in a present day Facebook story.
No, I think it'd be more about him and his wife.
The Russia stuff.
Yeah, and I think some of the good that he tried to do, but I think he's such a flawed character, right? In real life, I think he truly has tried to do good things, but Facebook has gotten so out of his own control that he kind of comes out as the bad guy, which, and I don't think he's a good guy in any sense. I just think that he's kind of forced to be the face of this. I mean, he is the face of the company, right? Because he's Mark Zuckerberg, but he's had to come to his defense so many times that like he's the evil guy. And I mean, he was, as you saw on The Social Network, he was the evil guy there too, by his own doing. But you also have the other side of the story where his wife, who I just saw an interview with her recently, and she's doing a lot of wonderful things, and there's a lot of good that she does, and she says that, the good that he does behind the scenes of all this quote unquote evil stuff. I don't know. It's such an interesting He's an interesting character for sure. I mean, I'm certainly no fan of his in real life, and I'm no fan of Facebook, which I've thought constantly recently to just get off completely.
He's a fascinating character, especially when you factor in a lot of the election controversies in the way that his platform was used to manipulate an election.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think you're seeing that stuff with Priscilla Chan because they have done a lot of charitable work and they've tried to be a little bit more like Bill and Melinda Gates where they give back. And they've given $100 million to assist election administrators in the past couple of weeks. But it kind of goes back to, in this movie, one of the more poignant lines is when the Rashida Jones character says, "You're not an asshole, Mark. You just try so hard to be." And I feel like that it really just sums up why that character is so dangerous. It's this guy who, like, at his core is not a bad dude, but by the nature of what he controls and who he feels like he's supposed to be, he can do so many dangerous things because he has so much power. Like, he has the way that the world communicates with each other at the tip of his fingers, and he can do whatever the hell he wants with it. And it's really scary stuff. And
which is why it's a horror film in its own right.
Yeah, it is. And it's not like, you know, we're obviously, we feel a certain way politically, but you have Donald Trump, who is this public figure who I feel like does things that are overtly evil, like just cartoon villain behavior. And then you have Zuckerberg, where it's much more hidden. Like, you're just sort of, he's not a threatening person, but he just feels that way because of how much power and control that he has.
Yeah, he's clearly the smartest guy in the room, right? Which is, I mean, those guys are always kind of scary because, I mean, you know, their intelligence, I mean, you're not going to beat them there, right? And
right.
So it's going to be hard to win any sort of argument with them, you know. But on a social level, in real life, socially, he's inept, right? He's not great at socializing with people, which is he's funny.
Awkward.
What's so ironic is because he literally makes this whole social network of socializing without having to be in the same room with the person, right? You can just be across the world, and then you don't have to go through the awkwardness of being in an actual physical relationship with someone, talking to someone face to face. Which he's always been really bad at doing, which you can see, and not just in this movie, but you see that to present day, man. When he's interviewed, when he's on the stand in the hearing or whatever, man, the guy is just like, he can't.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting because social media is this wonderful tool that, if used properly, allows people to communicate in all different areas of the world. It brings people together. Without it, I don't know how any of us survive these past 7 months, because without the ability to physically communicate, we need those outlets, those ways to reach people that we can't otherwise reach. But from a conceptual standpoint, for a guy like Zuckerberg, like, this idea comes from an inability to socialize in a normal environment, because he's just not a very charming guy. He is rough around the edges, very hard to get along with. So he copes with that by developing a substitution for social interaction, a way to talk to people with your keyboard as opposed to your mouth. And it's how we've ended up here. It's just a fascinating story.
Yeah. And he can't be wrong, you know, he can't be corrected, he can't be criticized, which is a major flaw of his. Because the moment anyone tries to do so, he takes that as a personal vendetta against them to destroy their lives in one way or another.
I think that he's obviously it's been one of the most successful companies of our generation. But when you watch a film like The Social Network that's trying to like break down the way that the company started and how things came to be, like he's not a business mind. Like his mind is very much tech oriented. The ways that he thinks about things aren't necessarily universal. Like he has a very unique frame of mind. The Andrew Garfield character, I think, is much more the cipher for the way someone like you or me would think about this technology. And the Garfield character obviously is very excited about the idea, but it's more so from a business perspective where he sees the potential in this enterprise and he wants to put the work in and get the advertisers and find ways to profit off of it and make the money. Maybe that was a little small-minded. I mean, who can say at this point? Obviously, it's both men are very rich and successful.
Yeah, I love Garfield in this movie too.
It's like Kunis, where I think that it's a supporting performance where the lead, like the great performance with the lead, does not work without that great actor or actress pushing them on the opposite end and making, like, really accentuating all of those flawed aspects of the protagonist's personality.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, so the performances are obviously great, but I mean, Aaron Sorkin is a legendary writer, and these actors just have incredible dialogue to chew on in this movie, which I think is part of what makes it so memorable.
Yeah, man. Sorkin, back from his West Wing days. Isn't that where he got kind of well known for his writing on West Wing?
He did like A Few Good Men in the early 90s.
Yeah, he's got some gems there in the 90s. There are A Few Good Men, and it'd actually be kind of fun to go through his IMDb. I think I've done that in a while.
It's really just a great list that he has. Like A Few Good Men, The American President, obviously The West Wing, Social Network, Moneyball, Steve Jobs, and then he's got he directed a movie that comes out, I believe, this weekend on Netflix, the trial of the Chicago 7. So he also did The Newsroom for HBO, which is a show I liked a lot.
Man, I was on Black Swan's IMDb, and I went to writers, and I was like, what the hell? He's not there. He didn't write The Social Network. What's going on? What have we been lied to all this time?
Wrong movie.
Yeah, there he is. What were we talking about? I'm pretty pumped for that new Netflix movie. It's gotten really good reviews.
Yeah, I could use a good new movie, as a replacement for our lack of theater experiences. But yeah, he was great with TV as well. The West Wing is obviously his longest running show.
Yeah, man. Moneyball, amazing.
Wonderful.
The Steve Jobs movie I thought actually really enjoyed, which I'm guessing he got solely from writing The Social Network. He got that Steve Jobs job.
It's a short walk between the two of them.
I never saw Charlie Wilson's War.
I think that's probably his least critically acclaimed movie.
Oh man, yeah, and he was a big guy on Sports Night. Yeah, man, the writing is really the heart of the movie. I mean, it's just one, dialogue quip after another, man. Just
it's so snappy.
Yeah, from Eisenberg to Garfield to Timberlake,
Armie Hammer.
The Hammer brothers.
The Hammer brothers.
Yeah, I was amazed that he was playing both the twins. Because I didn't know who he was until The Social Network. So
yeah, it's kind of an interesting choice.
Yeah, I had kind of figured that they were actual twins, but then I think I found out before I ever saw the movie that they were both played by him. And dude, that was an incredible performance. Was he nominated for anything for that? Or
I don't think he was.
I think he was like the big snub that year. I remember that being like a thing. Like people felt that Armie Hammer
The
was kind
only-
of snubbed for
the
like he
only,
should have gotten supporting.
Well, the only acting nomination is Eisenberg, which is crazy to me because of how good I think Hammer and Garfield are.
Yeah, man.
And even Rooney Mara in her like brief 2-scene performance from the beginning of the movie, she's really great as the girl that he's on a date with in the first scene. And it kind of kicks off this whole obsession of his with being liked.
Yeah, I mean, her character isn't in the movie a whole lot, but the presence is there, right? Her like,
right. She's the last thing you see is him refreshing her Facebook page.
Yeah,
but,
I love that closing song too. The Beatles, whatever is it called, Rich Man or something? Whatever it's called. It's such a good song to close out on.
And you said earlier the soundtrack of this movie is just incredible.
Oh man, yeah, Trent Reznor just absolutely destroys this soundtrack in this film, and I think it really, in a lot of ways, it's its own character, man, because it helps. It helps with that fast dialogue, right? Those constant tones and those sounds he uses throughout the entire film, just like resonates so much through every scene, and scenes where it gets a little more intense or it's like a little darker. Zuckerberg does something horrible, says something absurd, like the music goes right along with it. And I love the soundtrack so much. I would definitely put it up there if you're going to call it, whatever, top 10, maybe top 5, maybe best film of the last decade. You also have to throw in the conversation that it's arguably the best soundtrack of the decade as well.
Yeah, undisputably. I mean, it's iconic at this point, and I think that this score gets frequently sampled in other things where you hear like some of those melodies and you're like, where do I recognize that from? It's probably from The Social Network. And it's a testament to, obviously this movie won best score at the Oscars, rightfully so. It's a testament to how much this movie has stuck in the conscience for the past 10 years.
Yeah, and what's funny too is you know what I kind of think back to as well, like with The Social Network, is I think like, oh yeah, the soundtrack's very similar to Fight Club, right? Which is also a Fincher movie. But
right.
Reznor didn't have anything to do with that score, did he?
With Fight Club?
No, Fight Club, yeah. I see he did Dragon Tattoo, he did Gone Girl, Man on Fire. He composed all the soundtracks of those movies. Which, dude, Gone Girl also incredible. The music in that's great.
Yes, for sure.
But yeah, it's funny that I would have thought he would have done Fight Club as well.
Let's see who did the Fight Club score.
The
Dust Brothers.
Oh yeah, you know what? That I remember that now actually, and that makes total sense. But that's also an incredible soundtrack. I mean, clearly Fincher is just like keen on finding these incredibly talented musicians, composers to do his soundtracks for him. And then he latched on to Trent Reznor after Man on Fire. But yeah, I mean, I can just hear
Trent Reznor's 9 Inch Nails, isn't he?
Yep.
He did the score for Fincher's new movie that is coming out here in
oh yeah, that's another one I'm excited about, which
December.
I just watched the trailer to that. It also looks great. Man, you got a Fincher and a Sorkin movie coming out and within months of each other.
Yeah. It's come full circle 10 years later.
Huh.
And now you have he did Waves last year. That was an amazing score. Damn. Yeah, this is some great work that he's done. But yeah, it's an iconic piece of that movie, and it's the kind of movie that I think gets better every time I see it. I find more things to like about it. And it's hard to, you talk about it too much in depth, you're just kind of gushing about all the different things that are great, because they, like, every element of it is pretty iconic at this point.
Yeah, and it's going back to talking about how it's a horror film in its own right. Yeah, we've literally lived it out as human beings, you and I, and everyone else in this country, world, however you want to put it. The impact that Facebook has had on our society in the last 10 years, considerably with our elections, right? And the past, the election that got Donald Trump nominated, it's horrific. It's terrifying. And
and I feel like it was a cautionary tale at the time, and nobody took the caution.
No.
Like, we all just like, man.
I didn't take the caution. I was like, oh man, Facebook, am I right? Crazy social network.
Yeah, I
never thought of it having this sort of impact.
Like, I remember just being a teenager being like, wow, a movie about Facebook. I use that a lot. That's interesting. But obviously,
I like origin stories.
Yeah. Let me see how this came to be. And then you watch it and you're like, God, that's kind of freaking dark. Like, he developed it like off of this idea where he would put pictures of women he went to school with and have you rate if they're hot or they're not. Like, that's kind of sinister, but that's how it started. I love the tagline of this movie too, where it's, you don't get 500 million friends without making a few enemies.
Yeah.
It's very clever.
The other interesting thing to me is, where did Sorkin and, Fincher, where did they get their information from, right? Like, who are their sources?
I mean, it's from there's a book by Ben Mesrich called The Accidental Billionaires, and that's what Sorkin adapted. He just straight
up adapted from that book. He didn't
straight up adapted from the book. It's not like it was a heavily investigated.
Right.
This book didn't even come out until July of 2009. Fincher got his hands on the transcript well before the book was even released. He loved it. He thought it was fascinating. He's like, this is the story of our time. And he quickly got to work on writing it, and like basically had the script done before the book had even come out. And like, Fincher wasn't even attached at this point. So this was just something that they thought Aaron Sorkin was born to write, and they had him do it. And then they got their director and worried about it later.
I just wonder who was talked to, like who kind of spilled the beans on all this stuff. And I mean, I'm sure there's answers out there. I don't know them. I haven't dug that deep. Or like, I wonder even what does Zuckerberg himself think of this movie, or like, what does he just brush it off? Does he?
I think he brushes it off. To my knowledge, and this could be confirmed by like Wikipedia, the book Accidental Billionaires, which like the subtitle is The Founding of Facebook, A Tale of Sex, Money, Genius, and Betrayal.
That's a mouthful.
He sourced it primarily from conversations with Eduardo Saverin, and then wrote it using the court documents that are obviously public record between the lawsuits with the Winklevoss twins and with Zuckerberg versus Saverin. And that's how he wrote the book, is using the court documents.
Nice.
So Sorkin has always maintained that like, this is a book based in reality, but it's fictionalized accounts of these characters. Like, the characters,
for sure, yeah.
The characters are fantastical. Although I think that it's interesting. I've heard a lot of people talk about the way that Zuckerberg's portrayed. And they've said, does Sorkin have contempt for Zuckerberg? Like, does he hate him? I don't know that I think he does, but what I do sense is that David Fincher finds him fascinating.
Right.
Because the way that he's filmed, the way that Fincher like frames the character, it just shows a lot of like Fincher is not passing judgment onto him, but he's very much intrigued by who this person is.
How could you not be?
Probably the most influential guy of our generation. Yeah, I mean, great movie. Timberlake, we didn't really talk about, but I think Timberlake is really good in this movie. He's maybe the weakest link when you break it down in terms of the major players. He does a nice job of going against his super confident boy band persona. He brings that to Sean Parker. He's got all this pizzazz and all this charm, but then underneath it all is this wimpy little douchebag.
Pathetic, loser. Timberlake's amazing in this. I thought he was perfect for that role. I mean, not because I think he's a loser.
It's great casting.
He's a good actor, Timberlake. I always thought he has been. Let's not forget about Black Snake Moan. I think there's another one or two things that he's pretty good in, but yeah, he's always an enjoyable actor, and I thought this was perfect casting for him, and he knocked it out of the park for sure. I mean, the whole cast in this movie is fantastic.
The scene towards the end of the movie where it's Andrew Garfield telling the story about how his shares were diluted and him finding this out, and he confronts Mark in the Facebook offices, and it leads to that, you better lawyer up, asshole, because I'm not coming for 30%. I'm coming back for all of it. It all culminates in that scene, and it's one of my favorite sequences, I think, in any movie ever, because it just, every time I watch it, the Garfield performance is so good. Timberlake, the way Timberlake is being a freaking shit to him, it just makes my stomach drop.
And then when he flinches,
and to watch the Garfield character talk about how his shares got diluted from 30-something% all the way up like 0.01%, and it's just agonizing. But there's that great interaction where you, like you said, Timberlake flinches back, and then Garfield says, I like staying next to you, Sean. It makes me feel so tough.
Yeah.
It's just great, quippy back and forth. So it sticks with me all these years later.
And since it's been a few months since I watched it, what did they say how much he ends up getting in the end? I mean, because he does go for all of it, right? But how much does he actually end up?
I think, let me just do a quick Google search. At the time the movie was made, the Eduardo Saverin lawsuit wasn't settled yet. So the Winklevoss, I don't know how to pronounce it, the Winklevoss twins, their settlement had already been finalized. And I think they got like $65 million or something like that.
Not bad chunk of change.
Is what they got. But Eduardo Saverin, according to Business Insider, he won 4.5% of Facebook in the lawsuit, which today is worth $5 billion. And that was in 2012. So Facebook's worth today is like $775 billion. So just think about 4.5% of that. And that's what he walked away with. But like deservingly so, he was a co-founder of the company.
That's insane.
It's really just absurd wealth. And like his net worth goes well beyond Facebook. Like I remember doing research on this, and Eduardo Saverin has just like continued to make millions of dollars off other sorts of companies. According to Forbes, his net worth as of July of this year is $13.1 billion, which is not quite Zuckerberg, who's listed as like $100 billion. But
I'll take the 13 bill. No
13
problem.
billion. 13 billion seems good to me.
Wow.
So yeah, quite a story.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful movie. The story itself,
not so beautiful.
Not so beautiful, but the film, the directing, the soundtrack. I mean, it's about as close to a perfect movie as you can get.
Yeah, and it, we'll start wrapping up this. We'll talk about it towards the end of the year. This movie was a favorite to win Best Picture at the Oscars, and it did not win. It lost to The King's Speech, which we'll talk about next month. But it's one of the biggest snubs of my memory. I remember just being pissed off that.
Do we have to watch The King's Speech? Are we doing that one?
Yeah, we gotta watch all the nominated movies.
I guess we have to watch the one that won the Oscar, huh?
Just to be a completist. I actually don't. I mean, I think The King's Speech is fine. It's just not nearly as good as The Social Network.
Dude, I honestly can't even remember if I've seen The King's Speech. I don't know. I don't think I have.
It's possible you haven't.
Well, maybe. It's Colin Firth, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I think I may have ended up watching that at some point, but is it has to do with him and an old lady? No.
It's
maybe,
like,
might be thinking of a different movie.
Yeah.
You know what? Actually, yeah, I am thinking of a different movie. I'm thinking of that one with Steve Coogan.
You're thinking of Philomena, yeah.
Philomena.
King's Speech is about like the king with the speech impediment.
No, I see. I've never seen that. I've never watched it, so that'll be a first for me.
So it's worth checking out because obviously it won Best Picture. So you need to watch it and either react with, oh, like I could see it, that's good, or like what the fuck, this one, and
you know what? I'll probably
or Black Swan.
I bet I'll love it, but at the same time, I'll hate that it won over these movies because there's no way. Well, for me anyway, there's no way it could be better. There's no possible way, but. I'll give it a chance. I'll give it a shot. Yeah, so I do like heartwarming movies like that. I mean, I'm a sucker for those type of films. So
I've not seen it in a long time. I remember it being good, not like super memorable. But we're almost there. We've covered 6 of the 10 Best Picture nominees so far from this year.
I'm really excited about The Fighter. That's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, December. So just for listeners, we're going to cover The King's Speech, 127 Hours, and Unstoppable next month. Unstoppable will be like a nice little palate cleanser from those 2 like more dramatic movies because it's just like a super fun action movie. And then we'll close out the year with True Grit, The Fighter, Tron Legacy, and do a little wrap up and review, and then we're on to 2011. So fun stuff.
Stay safe out there, everyone. Don't forget that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and go vote. Make sure you vote.
Yep. Go out there and vote. By the time we record again, this nightmare election season will hopefully be over, unless the president decides to drag it out for many months afterwards. But we will hope that it's over. Go out there and vote. Stay safe, and we will see you next time.
Elsewhere on We Made This. We are Starfleet.
Honestly, it felt so great to see the Starship Discovery again.
Yeah, out of the frying pan and into the fire.
Right into the fire. So in our previous episode, I had commented on how I felt like all the dramatic tension that the writers built up with Burnham falling kind of felt like, all right. But here, I felt the exact opposite. It just seemed like the right blend of tension and risk and what's at stake.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, and I think there's a couple of reasons for this. One, I think
giddy carousel of pop.
So there's one particular thing where I think Sylvia just nails the Manics, absolutely nails them, and nails them to this day. And she says, the Manics' mission is a simple one. They want to make music exciting, glamorous, and interesting again. Make people wake up out of the boredom and meaninglessness of 20th century life and jump up and down to some good old rock and roll music and think about things and have a laugh, because at the end of the day, none of us will ever be happy. And I had to have everything about them immediately.
The Movie Palace.
Before we even think about the book, I suppose, were you coming to this as a Marilyn Monroe fan, particularly?
No, not at all. In fact, I'll admit, it's very awful, but I knew almost nothing about Marilyn Monroe. I knew of her. She's a cultural icon.
Yeah.
I would say she's even gone beyond that now, and she's almost a symbol. So I knew of her. I had seen a few movies that she'd been in, although, to be honest, whenever I watched those movies, I wasn't really focusing on her because she was sort of in the background.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.